I called the Texas State, like Keith Bell's office, and I was like, what's going on with that? He was like, it's been introduced, it's been 33 days. Honestly, probably nothing's going to happen with it. But just the fact that it was even introduced is enough to make me a little crazy. Welcome back to Moms Against the Machine. I'm Chelsey, stay-at-home mom, history nerd, and professional chaos coordinator. Today we're diving headfirst into a subject that hits every one of us in the gut, the future of democracy, and how the rights we thought were guaranteed are once again on the chopping block.
And I'm Jen, driver of many teens, one grad school educated turned stay-at-home mom, and I'm a professional coffee stealer from my kids' teacher's lounge. Together, we are a suburban duo trying to make sense of this crazy world. And trust us, nothing is crazier than what happens when moms get together talking about democracy.
From the women of Seneca Falls to the mothers standing in line for hours just to cast a ballot, this fight is ours now. And the forces trying to rip away those rights, they aren't even hiding it anymore.
This isn't just politics, it's a power grab. They're rewriting the rules to silence millions and keep control. Think fascism can't happen here, it's already at the doorstep.
If you're new here, we connect today's headlines to the history that shaped them, because that's how you stop history from repeating, right? Oh, at least the awful stuff.
And if you're a returning listener, welcome back, sister. Grab your lukewarm coffee or reheat that coffee for a third time and buckle up because we're diving deep.
Oh, cling.
Cheers.
Picture this. You're standing in a long line. It's 85 degrees. Your kids are crying. Your phone is dead. Your oldest is screaming for water. You're exhausted, but you stay because this is voting in America. You wait because you believe your voice matters. You wait because someone marched, fought, and even died for you to have this right. And somewhere inside that polling place, there's a system quietly designed to make sure your voice counts just a little bit less.
Voter ID laws, poll closures, mail-in ballot restrictions, intimidation at the polls. They call it election integrity, but we know the truth. It's modern day suppression with lipstick on.
Lipstick on a pig?
Yep.
The women who fought for suffrage 100 years ago could have never imagined we'd still be here, fighting new battles, dressed up in old lies.
This isn't politics. This is survival. This is democracy or the death of it. And the question isn't if it can happen here. It's already happening.
That's why today we're talking about the battle for the vote, from Seneca Falls to the SAVE Act, because if moms aren't voting, nothing changes.
No more silence, no more waiting our turn, no more watching from the sidelines. Okay, let's rewind. 1848, Seneca Falls, New York. Two moms, Elizabeth Cady Stanton and Lucretia Mott, organized what became the first women's rights convention in the U.S., and they didn't even have coffee makers back then.
Honestly, organizing an entire women's rights movement without caffeine, that alone deserves a medal. But seriously, they were doing all this without the right to vote, to own property, or even to keep custody of their children in a divorce.
So for listeners who might be new to this, Seneca Falls wasn't just a meeting. It was the beginning of organized women's rights movements in America. Over 300 people came together, both men and women, to demand legal and social equality. And one of those people was Frederick Douglass.
Yes, and he didn't just show up, he spoke out. His presence there was powerful. It was a movement of solidarity between the abolitionist and women's rights movements. He knew both fights were linked, and he wasn't afraid to say so.
Which makes me think, if motherhood makes us more invested in the future, shouldn't we be trusted to vote on that future? Chelsey, why do you think it took so long for motherhood itself to be seen as political?
Because people underestimated moms. We were supposed to be quiet, soft, supportive, but never loud. But moms know nurturing isn't silence, it's protection. It's standing up when our families are at risk.
And that's what Stanton and Mott understood. At the convention, they presented the Declaration of Sentiments. It was modeled after the Declaration of Independence. And listen to this line here. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal.
That one sentence, radical. In 1848, just saying the words, women are equal, was enough to start a fight. Even some people at the convention thought demanding the vote was going too far.
Which feels familiar, right? Today, when we ask for health care, paid leave, or childcare, we're still told that we're asking for too much. But these are literally basic things.
Jen, have you ever felt too extreme just for demanding the bare minimum?
Oh, yeah. I've been called radical for wanting fully funded schools. I've been called radical for wanting health care that won't bankrupt our family. But that's not radical. That's mom math. It's survival. And if that makes me radical, so be it.
I love that. And speaking of radicals, let's talk Susan B. Anthony. She joined the fight after Seneca Falls, and she came in blazing.
She was arrested in 1872 for voting illegally, and then when she went to trial, she stood her ground. She said, "It was we, the people, not we, the white male citizens, nor yet we, the male citizens, but we, the whole people, who formed the Union."
She didn't just challenge her arrest, she challenged the idea that citizenship and voting were separate. She knew they belonged together.
And she wasn't alone. Sojourner Truth, formerly enslaved activist preacher, stood on stages where people didn't want her to speak. She demanded that the fight include Black women too.
I have borne 13 children and seen most all sold off to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me, and ain't I a woman? That quote never gets easy to hear. She wasn't just fighting for votes, she was fighting for her children, for survival.
It's so important that we note that suffrage was not just a white woman's movement. Black women, immigrant women, Native women, they had to fight even harder. The 19th Amendment came in 1920, but many women still couldn't vote safely until the Voting Rights Act of 1965. And even now, voter suppression is alive and well. Chelsey, how do you see voting as a part of your motherhood?
Every time I vote, it's for my kids. Their schools, their healthcare, their safety. It's not just my voice, it's theirs too, and I bring their future into the voting booth with me.
Because our vote shapes the world. And that's why these women, Stanton, Mott, and Anthony and Truth, weren't just suffragists. They were visionaries. They didn't fight just for the ballot, they fought for justice.
Seneca Falls lit the match, but it's up to us to keep the fire burning. And as moms, that fire lives in us now.
Mike, we've touched on Seneca Falls, the spark that lit the fire, but let's dive deep into the woman who carried that torch forward with fierce determination, Susan B. Anthony.
Susan B. Anthony wasn't just a suffragist. She was an institution. I mean, people today might recognize her name mostly from the coins our grandmas collected. But this woman was seriously radical for her time. And Jen, you mentioned her arrest earlier. I think we've got to unpack that one.
So in 1872, Susan, who was at the time already a well-known advocate for abolition, women's rights, decided that enough was enough. She walked right into her local polling station in Rochester, New York, cast her ballot for the presidential election, and just waited. She knew exactly what she was doing.
Can you even imagine? She knew they'd arrest her, and they did. They put her on trial in this massive spectacle. People packed the courtroom, mostly men who thought she was completely insane. But Susan stood tall, calm as can be, as they accused her of unlawfully voting.
And then whenever the judge declared her guilty without even letting them deliberate, Susan did not go quietly. She stood up right there in the courtroom and delivered one of the most powerful statements in American history. "I shall never pay $1 of your unjust penalty. Resistance to tyranny is obedience to God."
And let's just sit with that for a second. Resistance to tyranny is obedience to God, not obedience to a king, not obedience to a political party, and not obedience to a broken system. Susan B. Anthony stood in a courtroom, surrounded by men who laughed at her, jailed her, silenced her, and she still dared to say, "You're wrong, I'm right, and history will prove it." I feel like we say that a lot right now, too. That's not just bravery, that's conviction. That's what real patriotism looks like. The kind that doesn't worship power, but demands justice. She was fighting to win favor. She was fighting to be heard by the future, and we are the future she fought for. Literal chills, Jen. She refused to back down, and she never paid that fine. She knew paying would legitimize the idea that her vote was a crime. It's that level of integrity that floors me every time. Do you think today we'd have the courage Susan did to break laws we know are unjust just to make a point?
Honestly, I want to say yes, but I think that her bravery was next level. She had no guarantee at all that history would side with her, and she did it anyway. I hope we never forget how much strength it took for women just like her to demand that their humanity be recognized.
Susan B. Anthony was unapologetic. She traveled tirelessly, gave hundreds of speeches a year, and even helped launch The Revolution, a weekly publication dedicated to suffrage, workers' rights, and women's equality. She once said, "Organize, agitate, educate must be our war cry."
And it's still our war cry today. Heavy on the agitate for me. And talk about the strategy. Susan teamed up with Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and together they were unstoppable. Stanton was more the writer, the visionary, and Susan was the voice, the powerhouse who would take those ideas to the masses. It's like they completed each other.
And I think there's such a powerful lesson there. We don't have to do this alone. Change comes from partnership. When moms, sisters, friends come together, that's when the revolution happens. Susan and Elizabeth prove that.
Chelsey, has there ever been a partnership in your life that gave you courage like that?
Oh, for sure. Honestly, it's our partnership. Finding someone who sees the same injustices you do and refuses to stay silent has given me so much courage. Susan and Elizabeth set that example, and we're just following their blueprint.
I completely agree. And it's so important that we remind the listeners that Susan and Elizabeth didn't always get to see their victories. Susan B. Anthony died in 1906, 14 years before women finally won the right to vote in 1920 with the 19th Amendment.
That still makes me so sad.
No.
But even on her deathbed, Susan said those unforgettable words. Failure is impossible.
She was right. That message is for all of us today, isn't it? Failure isn't possible if we refuse to give up. Every step that we take towards justice, towards equality, it all matters.
Even when it feels impossible, when politicians are stripping rights, when voting lines stretch for hours, when districts are gerrymandered beyond recognition, we have to remember those words. Failure is impossible because as long as we keep fighting, we haven't failed. Has there been a moment lately when Susan's words rang true for you? Where were you when you felt like giving up, but you didn't?
Definitely. So with the last few election cycles, it's been pretty draining watching the voter restrictions increase in Texas and seeing the funding for public schools slashed. It's easy to get overwhelmed, but I just keep reminding myself, if Susan could fight her entire life without ever seeing her victory, I can keep making calls, showing up, and educating people in our community. She fought a marathon, and I can at least run my leg of the relay.
Even if it's backwards.
Exactly. When it feels that way.
I love that imagery, Jen. The relay. We're part of the same relay team that Susan started over a century ago. The baton's in our hands now, and our daughters are watching.
They're learning from us, from how we vote, how we speak up, and they will carry that baton after us. We owe it to Susan, to all of these women, to run as hard as we can for as long.
Now that we've honored Susan B. Anthony, we need to talk about another powerhouse. One who demanded space in a movement that didn't always make room for her. Sojourner Truth.
I think it's such an important part of history. Sojourner Truth was a formerly enslaved woman, a preacher, an advocate who knew what true equality meant for all women, not just white women with money and influence.
She wasn't invited to most suffrage meetings. She was often silenced or sidelined. But in 1851, at the Women's Convention in Akron, Ohio, she took the stage anyway and gave the speech that would echo through generations. Ain't I a woman?
And she didn't come with a speechwriter. She didn't have a platform. She had a lived experience and raw truth. And that was much more powerful than any script.
She stood in front of a room, mostly of white women and white men, and reminded them that their fight for women's rights could never be real if it didn't include Black women. That's still something we're reckoning with today.
Absolutely. She talked about being a mother, about working like a man in the fields, about being sold and beaten and yet still being denied basic rights. Her words cut straight to the hypocrisy of the system. I have borne 13 children and seen most all sold off to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. Ain't I a woman?
It still hits every time we read it.
It really does. Sojourner Truth forced the suffrage movement and America to look at all of their blind spots. And a lot of these people didn't like it, but she never stopped.
She kept showing up. She kept speaking. She worked for abolition, prison reform, and property rights. She challenged white women in the movement to expand their vision, and she was intersectional before the word even existed.
And her legacy does remind us that solidarity means more than just showing up for the issues that only affect you. It means listening to people, pushed to their margins, and refusing to let them be erased.
And as moms, we feel that deep in our bones. She wasn't just asking for justice, she was demanding it for her children, for all children. She reminds us that motherhood is political and that silence is complicity.
Her words, "Ain't I a woman," still challenge us today. They ask us whether we're building a movement that makes room for every woman's story, for every woman's voice.
We can't claim progress if our feminism isn't inclusive. We owe Sojourner Truth more than just remembrance. We owe her action.
Okay, Chelsey, buckle up, because we're diving into the life and legacy of Ida B. Wells, a woman who embodied courage, clarity, and a relentless passion for justice.
I have been looking forward to this all week. Ida B. Wells was one of those voices who, when you first learn about her, it kind of shakes you awake, you know? She was absolutely fearless.
Fearless is exactly the word I would use. She wasn't just fighting for women's rights, she was actively taking on the brutal racism of the Jim Crow era. Her life story feels almost unreal, like a movie script, except every single word is true.
For listeners who might not be familiar, Ida was born into slavery in Mississippi in 1862. When she was 16, tragedy struck. Her parents and a sibling died from yellow fever. Ida became an instant mom to her younger siblings. She dropped out of college, lied about her age to get a teaching job, and held her family together.
And that's just the beginning. Her life was shaped by a refusal to stay silent, even when speaking out was dangerous. Like when she took on the segregated train cars in 1884, long before Rosa Parks. Ida refused to give up her seat in a ladies' car reserved for white women. She was forcibly removed and even bit the conductor.
Sorry, I couldn't hold my laugh back because I knew it was coming.
I know.
I mean, talk about fighting back. She actually took the railroad company to court and initially won the lawsuit, although later it was overturned. But it put her name on the map. It showed her that resistance and the legal system could be powerful tools for justice. Do you think Ida's willingness to literally bite back is something we could all channel a bit more today? I'm so sorry.
Absolutely.
I love her. What an icon.
I'm feral AF. Ida teaches us that there is a time for civility, but there's also a time for righteous anger. Sometimes you have to bite back, metaphorically anyway. We can't be afraid to call out injustice. Ida made that very clear.
Ida's biggest fight came from when 3 of her closest friends, successful Black businessmen, were lynched by a white mob in Memphis in 1892. By the way, did you see that the church was just burned down that MLK used to preach at in Memphis? Yes, they just burned down a church. Sorry, that was really heavy. She refused to let their stories be forgotten. Ida wrote powerful investigative journalism, exposing the horror of lynching. She published names, facts, and stories, risking her own life to get the truth out. The way to right wrongs is to turn the light of truth upon them. Ida B. Wells.
And her truth-telling got her targeted. Her printing press was burned down. Her life was threatened repeatedly. She had to flee the South for her own safety, but she still never stopped speaking out.
And let's remember, while she was relentlessly fighting racism, Ida was also deeply involved in the suffrage movement. She was a founding member of the NAACP and actively challenged the racism even within the suffrage organizations themselves.
Ida also refused to march separately at the famous 1913 Women's Suffrage Parade. The white suffragists told the Black women to march at the back to appease the Southern racists, and Ida said nope. She stepped right into the parade, marching side by side with her Illinois delegation.
And she should have, too. There's no reason to separate, especially when you're all fighting for the same right.
Yeah, like, come on.
Yeah, that's when you join hands, no matter what. I think about that moment a lot because even within movements we support, sometimes there's discrimination or exclusion. Ida showed us you can and must fight injustice wherever you find it, even among your allies.
Chelsey, has there ever been a moment like Ida's where you had to stand up even when you felt really uncomfortable?
You know, Jen, the discomfort Ida must have felt is something we all feel at times, not at that level. I have not had to face something at that level, but I do feel we're called to the same courage, to speak truth even if our voice shakes. Ida's example gives me strength when I'm scared to speak up in our rural red community.
Exactly. Ida's life reminds me that true courage isn't about never being scared. It's about refusing to let that fear stop you. And the way that Ida lived is a roadmap, especially today when voter suppression is once again becoming mainstream. When lawmakers target minority communities through gerrymandering, voter ID laws, and intimidation, that is the same struggle that Ida fought against over 100 years ago.
It's stunning how relevant her words remain today. Here's another powerful quote of hers. One had better die fighting against injustice than die like a dog or a rat in a trap.
That fire, that conviction. Ida knew there was no real safety in silence. The only way forward is through truth and action. It's why we have to stay informed, stay vocal, and stay connected to history.
Jen, when you think about our listeners, moms who might feel too overwhelmed or too afraid, or even just women who feel too overwhelmed or too afraid, how do you think Ida's legacy can help them find their voice?
Ida proves that one voice, just one, matters, even against overwhelming odds. And you don't have to do it alone. Ida built coalitions. She educated the people around her. She lifted up others. If we commit to truth telling and community building the way Ida did, we become impossible to silence. I think that's very, very important to note today, that we have found a community of like-minded people in this landscape, which has been really comforting, because I know that we have supporters out there, and it makes us not feel as afraid to speak up and speak our truth.
Exactly. And we know that he's targeting us anyways. We know that he's out there. We know, our congressman specifically is watching us. So it's kind of nice, because you know that he cares enough, at least, about, not cares about what we're saying, but cares about the threat that we pose, trying to unite the counties together. So, I mean, he knows that we have multiple counties out there protesting him. We had representatives from every single one of his counties.
Yeah, which is incredible, because there was only one. What is the lady that said there was only 2 Democrats in her registered Democrats in her whole county?
Oh my God, I didn't hear that.
That's what she said. One of the ones from the tiny.
Oh my goodness.
Maybe it was town, not county.
It might have been
but
town.
Still, she said she's one of 2 Democrats. I was like, wow. But she showed up.
I cannot imagine that. Oof. I was like, I know I've got more than 2 on the street.
Yeah. I don't even go on my street, but I have you, so.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my little cul-de-sac is very
diverse.
It is. It's very diverse, but it's very, everybody's very involved.
I love that. We
all see each other. It's all like, hey, what's up? And, we look after each other's kids. And, I mean, I think I have 30 kids on my street alone. So everybody knows everybody.
I love that.
On the street. We know the cars. Somebody turns down our street. Everybody looks. If we know the car, we'll kind of sit back. But if we don't know the car, literally half the street, if they're outside, they just stand on the sidewalk and stare them down.
Get out of here.
Leave. Ida's legacy is hope. Hope that truth matters, that bravery counts, that change is possible. And today, she's a reminder to every single one of us that we have power. Moms and women all around listening. Your voice, your vote, I was doing so good with that one. Your voice, your vote, your courage matters more than you know.
Ida once said something else that I think Ida once.
It's the rain.
It is. Ida once said something else that I think we can't ever forget. The people must know before they can act, and there is no educator to compare with the press. We're moms, we're voters, and we're part of that education. We share Ida's mission every time we speak up and every time that we share these stories.
And what really sucks right now is that while we have the press, it's all independent journalists that we're getting the actual truth from. It's not big media, which is terrifying.
Crazy. I know, especially if they start suppressing those independent journalists.
I know. Coming up next, we'll honor the legacy of Alice Paul, who went to unimaginable lengths, arrest, hunger strikes, imprisonment, to secure our rights at the ballot box. Ida lit the torch, Alice carried it to the gates of power, and didn't knock politely. She kicked them open. If
you don't know Alice Paul's name yet, by the end of today, you're going to wonder why every kid in America doesn't grow up learning about her. I hadn't heard of her.
So mad I never learned about her.
Alice Paul was a strategist, a warrior, a woman who redefined what it meant to demand justice and to refuse to settle for anything less than equality.
She wasn't content with polite petitions and quiet waiting. Alice believed in confrontation. She organized protests. She led picket lines outside the White House, the first group ever to do it. And when President Wilson refused to endorse women's suffrage, she made sure the whole country saw it.
She called him out publicly in a way that no one dared to do at that time. Banners that read things like, "Mr. President, how long must we wait for liberty?" and hung them right outside the gates of the White House.
I love her so much. This is my favorite. And they didn't just stand there quietly. When Alice Paul and the Silent Sentinels refused to move, they were arrested under false charges of obstructing traffic. But they didn't go quietly. Alice and dozens of women were thrown into a workhouse prison. brutally treated, denied basic rights, and still they refused to break.
She also led a hunger strike in prison. She was force-fed through tubes that were rammed down her throat, a torture tactic that was used to silence her.
Imagine believing so deeply in a cause that you're willing to risk your life for it. Not just your freedom, not just your safety, your life.
They thought they could shame her, silence her, but instead they made her a martyr and a movement. The brutal treatment of suffragists hit the newspapers, and the outrage grew too big to ignore.
I can't imagine if something like that was happening right now. I mean, imagine we have Kilmar Abrego Garcia that got deported without due process, along with, 236 other people. And there's massive outrage. But if they had that happening, like right here in the US, and they were finding out about that on top of that right now, insanity would ensue. I think we would be out in the streets. Day and
I
night.
think so too. But what makes me scared is the group of people who aren't paying attention, because a lot of people are not.
I know. They're so overwhelmed. Yeah. They may agree with us, but they're so overwhelmed they won't touch anything, and they're scared to get involved, and I get it. Yeah. 2 years after Alice Paul's brutal imprisonment and hunger strike, Congress passed the 19th Amendment. Women finally won the constitutional right to vote in 1920. If there's one lesson you think moms like us should take from Alice Paul's story, what would it be?
To never apologize for demanding your full humanity. Alice Paul didn't settle for crumbs. She didn't wait her turn. She didn't tone it down to make anyone comfortable. She stood for the truth, and she didn't care even if it rattled the powerful.
Exactly. She wasn't just asking for the right to vote. She was demanding the right to full citizenship, the right to shape the future for her children, her country, and herself. In some of the things that she said, there will never be a new world order until women are a part of it. I always feel the movement is a sort of mosaic. Each of us puts in one little stone. It is incredible to me that any woman should consider the fight for full equality as a temporary phase to be soon ended.
And Alice didn't stop after the 19th Amendment. She kept fighting. She drafted the Equal Rights Amendment. Yes, the same Equal Rights Amendment that we still haven't ratified today.
I still can't believe we're still fighting that fight.
I know.
Still fighting the same fight that she was fighting. Imagine fighting for your whole life, winning what everyone said was impossible, and still looking forward and saying, we're not done yet. That's Alice Paul's legacy.
And that's the kind of legacy that we owe our daughters, our sons, and ourselves, honestly.
Moms and women listening, never doubt your voice, never doubt your power. Alice Paul didn't, and because she believed and because she refused to yield, we are standing here today. This fight didn't end in 1920. It didn't end in 1965. It's ours now. Let's carry it forward with Ida's fire, with Susan's courage, and with Alice's relentless hope.
Failure is impossible as long as we keep fighting.
This gives me so much just fire in my soul right now.
I know, but it makes me
These
sad
women were
because
amazing.
They did so much and we just haven't moved the needle forward enough.
Yeah, I think we kind of became complacent as just a gender.
Yes.
I think we've put a lot of people in danger because we became complacent.
I agree,
too.
Which is another reason. I was arguing on a live with somebody. It was a Native person. He came up and he said, "Don't speak for me." And I said, "I'm not speaking for you. I am using my privilege to amplify voices for voiceless people who are scared to speak out. And if you don't want me to speak for you, that's fine. I'm not speaking for you. I'm not speaking on behalf of you. But I am speaking for those people who can't get out in the streets and protest."
Yeah. It's I like to give everybody a voice and I want everybody's voices to be heard, but if you need help amplifying it because they're just not hearing you well enough, I'm ready to take that on now. I didn't know why I wasn't ready to take it on before, but I definitely am now.
I think because, like you said, we were complacent because things were okay and we were comfortable. And despite his first presidency, I didn't think he was going to be able to run again, honestly. That's why I got complacent.
I didn't either, not after the insurrection.
Right. I had no clue until I started seeing that he was really planning on running, and then I got very active at that point.
Yeah, I was like, there's no way the GOP would let him run again.
That's what I thought too. It's baffling.
Yeah. I don't think they had anybody that was going to make a big of enough splash. I think the Heritage was pushing to have whoever was going to win.
To push theirs.
Which, I mean, I guess that's what you do. But if it's not the best candidate.
It's a terrible candidate.
Yeah, so was J.D. Vance.
Oh, yeah. Did you see their the cabinet meeting today? They had a cabinet meeting today, and then did you see his interview with the NBC guy?
ABC
guy.
Are you talking about Trump?
Yes.
Yeah, I did. And that was amazing. And he was like, I honestly picked you because I'd never seen your name before. And that was a mistake.
But he said it has MS-13 on his knuckles. I'm like, no, that was like, photoshopped on.
That's photoshopped. And he was like, so you're telling me that's photoshopped?
Someone imposed, like, it was literally supposed to be showing that those symbols stood for that, right? That was what someone was indicating. And he thought that that was literally what was on his knuckles. Like, what?
Mm-hmm. I think they did that just that way he wouldn't push it and he would agree with them.
Yeah.
Because Trump is an idiot.
He really is. Oh.
I don't know how we got here.
Me neither.
We did, but oh, man. I mean, I've seen it. In the more history books I read, I understand it. But
it's unsettling. But I think the scary part is the way that the white men can be indoctrinated by these like pod bros. Like the podcast bros,
like the college kids and stuff.
And so it's scary that there's a whole generation of them that are going to set us back even further if something doesn't change.
And that really scares me for my daughter too, because when she starts dating, like I know she's going to be dating a guy that hopefully is not going to be red-pilled, and hopefully at that point we're going to be past that. And I want to teach her, to
look out for these things, ask these questions.
Because I have friends now that are dating. And I'm like, okay, well, make sure, that they're not a Republican.
Right.
Like, well, that's such an awkward thing to bring up. And I was like, no. I was like, if you bring it up and he agrees with you, that's a green flag.
So for
if you bring it up and he gets really mad about it, just ditch it.
You're done. For me, I'm literally like, wait, are you a Trumper? Like, what? Yeah. I can't believe that I'm friends with someone who's a Trumper.
Yeah. My very first question, if I was dating in today's world, who did you vote for?
Yeah. Oh, no.
Something we've learned while researching this episode is that every time women make progress, there's a backlash. And it's not new, it's not accidental, it's a pattern, a strategy, and a reaction that comes every single time we move forward. When women got the vote in 1920, we celebrated, but states immediately turned around and started suppressing Black women, Native women, immigrant women through their poll taxes, literacy tests, and intimidation. When the Voting Rights Act passed in 1965, states found new ways to suppress the vote. Gerrymandering, felony disenfranchisement, strict voter ID laws, and now in 2025, we are watching that same backlash happen again in real time. The SAVE Act is just the latest version. New name, same game. They call it election integrity, but really it just throws paperwork at poor people, new voters, and especially married women who have changed their name. You can vote in every election for 20 years and still be flagged because your name doesn't match a document from when you were born. And let's not forget Texas Governor Greg Abbott. He's already tried this exact tactic, claiming thousands of non-citizens were removed from the voter rolls. But ProPublica and the Texas Tribune found he had removed U.S. citizens too. Real people, real voters. So let's just call this exactly what it is. A coordinated, strategic attack on voting rights. A backlash that always comes after progress. And who gets targeted? Moms, working women, voters of color, people who don't have time to jump through all these bureaucratic hoops. This isn't just some random swing of the political pendulum. It's a backlash designed to wear us down little by little until we stop showing up. But here's the thing. We're not going anywhere. Our vote is our voice, and they wouldn't be trying so hard to silence us if it didn't matter. When Alice Paul said, "It is incredible to me that any woman should consider the fight for full equality as a temporary phase to be soon ended," she was warning us. The fight isn't over. The backlash is part of the battle, and we are part of the resistance. Okay, now we take this fight straight to the present day. We're talking about the politicians that write these bills, the systems that are enabling them, and how moms across Texas are refusing to back down. Buckle up. The gloves are off. Here's the thing about progress. Every time we get close to equality, the backlash shows up with a new name and a longer leash. We've talked about the Equal Rights Amendment. Let's walk through how it's still being held hostage, even now. In 2020,
Virginia became the 38th state to ratify the ERA, and that should have been it. That should have been our moment. But instead of celebrating, we got stalled. In January of 2020, Trump's Department of Justice said it was too late. In February of 2020, the House votes to remove the deadline. In 2023, a federal court tossed the case. And in 2024, the U.S. archivist said the ERA can't be certified without Congress. And in January of 2025, Biden's last few days, he said that the ERA should be ratified, but it's symbolic because nothing has changed.
It was an empty gesture at the end of his presidency, and I will never forget that. It's one of my biggest just sadnesses from that time, besides the fact that we were also inaugurating Trump in, but just that the women's rights weren't ratified. 100 years after Alice Paul wrote the ERA, and we still can't get basic gender equality into the Constitution. They're coming for the ballot box.
Enter the SAVE Act. It passed the U.S. House in April of this year, and it's now headed for the Senate. On paper, it's about preventing non-citizens from voting. In reality, it's a federal-level voter suppression law that's dressed up as election integrity.
It requires citizenship documentation to register to vote or change your registration. That means birth certificates, passports, military IDs, and if your name doesn't match your birth certificate, you are flagged.
That includes millions of women, married women, divorced women, trans people, immigrants. It's an estimated 69 million women and 4 million men don't have the documents that match their legal name, and over 21 million eligible voters don't have their documents readily available.
The attack on the trans community here is heartbreaking. This bill deliberately makes it harder for people who have changed their name to reflect who they are to be seen, to be counted, to be heard. And if you think that's just a coincidence, think again. If you have a couple minutes, listen to this recording we got from Julie Johnson's most recent town hall about the SAVE Act.
But it's a mess in the application. It says we only want citizens to vote in our elections. Well, that's the law now. We want citizens to vote in our elections. And the problem with what it does is then what's wrong with showing your birth certificate or showing your passport to be able to register and vote? Well, there's several things. One, they put it only to register in person at the registrar's office when there's one office in Dallas County from between 9 and 5 in the day. No online anything. I offered an amendment to make it online. Okay, you say you want to make people preserve, show their birth certificate, or make it where they can upload it online. They take our money online. Like we pay our taxes online. Why can't we show who we are online? Rejected outright. In fact, I got a vote on it on the floor on that amendment, and it's party lines straight down. Every Republican voted against American citizens being able to prove who they are by submitting their paperwork online. Another is, what if you're wrongfully denied the right to vote? I offered an amendment to make it give you a right to cure, that you could have a process to go to a district judge and say, I'm an American citizen, I'm being disenfranchised, my constitutional right to vote. They eliminated all of that. They said, no, you don't get a right to cure. If we wrongfully deny you, that is tough for you. We don't care. And then, this is the kicker of kickers. Married women. If you have changed your name, you have a birth certificate. The only way that they can get you to prove who you are is for a birth certificate or a passport. Well, and your names has to match. Because then some rogue election clerk from random and God knows where can say, you're not who you say you are. And we filed an amendment that says married women can be able to upload and show their marriage degree or whatever, name change, if you had a name change, whatever, you can be able to show this. It was voted down. So this isn't an attempt to try to keep the 152 cases of voter fraud they discovered out of 50 million people from voting. this is an attempt to keep women who vote more Democratic than Republican, to keep young people who don't have their documents, to keep lower economic folks who don't have their paperwork, or who can't afford $160 for a passport, or whatever else, to keep them from registering. Those things, then they should have accepted our amendments. Right? They should have removed these barriers to registering to vote in this state and in this country. And Texas is already one of the hardest states to vote. But now, now what's going to happen? Used to we'd have to print off a form and mail it in. That's no good if this passes. Now, I do think it passed the House on a party line vote. I'm very hopeful in the Senate it will. And, we have to hope that they do. It's my understanding, talking with our Democratic colleagues in the Senate, they're going to vote less for it coming over there. Because it's just an un-American bill. It disenfranchises people who have the lawful right to vote from casting their ballot, and that's unacceptable in this country.
This is part of the same strategy we've seen before. In the 1980s, the government targeted the LGBTQIA+ community in silence and shame, and now they're doing it again with law, paperwork, and registration barriers.
This isn't about fraud. There is no widespread non-citizen voting. This is about shrinking the electorate to protect power. And the SAVE Act would also ban registration by mail, online, or through drives. The same drives often organized by Black and brown women, moms, churches, and grassroots volunteers, and members of the military serving overseas. And hold on a second, because Mike Johnson said something that really pissed me off.
He's terrible. I can't stand him.
That's all right. They said they found him on Grindr anyways.
Yeah, I know.
So
that has to be true.
There are some things that I will not work hard to disprove. Yeah. And one of those is J.D. Vance killing the Pope. The fact that he screws couches. Mike Johnson on Grindr.
Yeah. No couch is safe. I would never invite him to my house because I wouldn't want him to sit on my couch. And they're not stopping with Congress because just like we've seen with abortion bans, with book bans, and anti-trans laws, Texas is already mimicking it.
Yeah. Okay. I thought I almost found it, and then it just... Oh. All right. Mike Johnson said, "We all know intuitively that a lot of illegals are voting in federal elections, but it's not been something that is easily provable. We don't have that number."
Intuitive.
Straight out of his mouth. It's not provable.
But we know it's happening because it just...
We know it's intuitively. We just know
it
it's
is.
happening.
Yeah, because we know.
We absolutely know. Yeah. So I saw that this morning, and while I was looking up the SAVE Act, I was like, that quote specifically, and I was like, okay. There's a bill currently on the Texas House floor, House Bill 3936, that takes voter suppression even further. If passed, it would require the cancellation of all voter registrations across the state following each presidential election. Now, I did talk to their office this morning, and he said it was introduced by a freshman, and it has already been on the floor for 33 days, and he doesn't think that there would be any movement past that point because of how long it's taking. But it was referred to a committee, and that's about as far as it's gotten. Just the fact that it is still here is terrifying, and that means that every voter, regardless of how long they've been registered or how often they vote, would be removed from the rolls and forced to re-register every 4 years.
No exceptions, no warnings, and that bill explicitly states that these cancellations can't be challenged or reversed. It's a mass disenfranchisement plan hiding in plain sight.
And now Texas legislators are mirroring the SAVE Act in their own bills, requiring citizenship documents, banning convenient registration, and making it harder for anyone who doesn't fit a perfect paperwork mold to cast a ballot.
It does not take a crystal ball to see where this is going. This is about silencing women, trans voters, people of color, immigrants, poor communities. They want a voting pool that they can control, and they are betting on our exhaustion. And to that end, I am so tired. I'm not going to give up, but I'm so tired of people telling me, but I register to vote. I use my ID and I just go and vote. I'm like, yeah, that's how it currently is. They have a bill that wants to change that. What do you not understand?
It's not registering in their brains.
Yeah, it's so frustrating.
The people that are fighting it. And I keep going back and forth and reading it, and it'll say like, well, I don't know. You used to be able to fill out a form and say, I'm a citizen. And then they would go back and check it, wouldn't they? Like they had to go back and check that. And when they checked that, if they found it, then they would convict you of perjury.
Right.
And now they're saying that that's going to go away too. Like, why would you not just follow up on those cases specifically if you were worried about non-citizen voting?
Exactly.
Why are you making every single person show proof of citizenship? But here's the truth. They are coming for us because they are scared of us. Scared of our voices, scared of our numbers, scared of the moms organizing in PTA meetings and at town halls. And honestly, they should be.
Yep, because we see the game, we see the pattern, and we are not going to let history repeat itself without a fight.
No. So if you are listening to this and thinking, but I don't have my birth certificate, or I changed my name, or I don't know if I'm registered, you're not alone. That's what they want. Confusion, silence, isolation, and we refuse all of it.
This isn't the end of our story. This is the start of the next chapter, and it's time to write it together.
If there's one thing history shows us, it's that progress doesn't happen because someone in power decides to hand it over. It happens because ordinary people, mothers, daughters, neighbors, friends, demand it, fight for it, and refuse to let it go.
The woman of Seneca Falls. Susan B. Anthony refusing to pay an unjust fine. Ida B. Wells facing death threats just to tell the truth. Alice Paul risked everything behind bars. They didn't fight because it was easy. They fought because it was necessary.
And today, right now, that baton is in our hands, not just for ourselves, but for our kids, for every future voter, every future activist, every future mom who deserves a voice.
And we're not asking for permission. We are not waiting for someone else to fix it. We are the ones that we've been waiting for.
So if you're feeling overwhelmed, good. That means you're paying attention. That means your heart's still beating, and that means you're ready to be part of what comes next.
They're counting on us to give up, and they're betting that we stay tired. We're going to make them regret it.
We fight with our ballots. We fight with our voices. We fight with our love for our kids, our communities, and the future that they deserve.
Failure is impossible as long as we keep showing up.
And we will, every day, every election, every fight. This is our chapter now.
I'm a mother who has stayed up at night wondering what kind of country my children will inherit. I'm a woman who refuses to believe that equality is a footnote or a phase. I am the result of every woman who marched, who spoke out, who refused to accept silence. And I'm raising the next ones. I don't want platitudes. I don't want promises. I want action. I want protection. I want a democracy that doesn't ask me to beg for basic rights every generation. I am not alone, and we are not finished. That gave me goosebumps.
I know. I love that. If this episode moved you, don't just listen, act. Check your voter registration. Actively. I check mine every couple months to make sure that I was not removed. Talk to your family about what's happening. Call your senators and tell them to block the SAVE Act. Show up for school board meetings, city council elections, local ballot fights. This isn't a spectator sport. It's a relay race, and you're holding the baton now.
And a side note, I saw that only 4% of Kaufman County early voted. That's a tiny number.
I think I shared that as well.
Okay, I was
Sarah.
befuddled when I saw the numbers. It's so abysmally low. People need to vote. Vote in your local elections, people, because those are the people that are helping you run your city council, your local governments, your school boards. It's very important. You can find us online on Instagram and Facebook at Moms Against the Machine Pod, on TikTok at Moms and Machines. We post updates, action alerts, and ways to plug in weekly. So join us, stay loud, stay ungovernable.
Until next time, raise kids, raise hell, and never ever back down.
Yeehaw.
Woohoo! Yeehaw. Yay.